Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first session in our 2017 fall webinar series on adjusting to a diagnosis of epilepsy. All participants will be in listen-only mode during this webinar, so please type any questions that you have in the questions section at the bottom of your webinar screen, and we will answer them at the end of today's webinar. So I would now like to introduce our speaker, who is Carrie Erwin, licensed social worker with the Yale Comprehensive Epilepsy Center. In her role, she provides resource assistance and emotional support to patients of the Epilepsy Center. So welcome and thank you, Carrie, for joining us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So again, welcome to everyone and thank you for coming to this presentation on adjusting to a diagnosis of epilepsy. And I do apologize, I might lose my voice a little bit throughout the presentation, so I apologize ahead of time for that. I almost called this presentation Adjusting to a New Diagnosis of Epilepsy because for a lot of people, some of this will be, these will be the reactions and experiences that they have when they're first diagnosed, but others may be a little farther along in their journey through the diagnosis as well. So, as most of you know, receiving a diagnosis of epilepsy can really be a life-changing experience, and it may take some time for the full impact of the diagnosis on your life to become clear. An adjustment really to your diagnosis really is a journey. Some of the common emotions that you might experience at the beginning of this process, especially when you're first diagnosed, you might at first feel a sense of relief. It might have been a long journey to try to figure out what was going on and get a diagnosis. And knowing what the problem is does allow you to take action and start to manage the seizures with medication and lifestyle changes. The initial relief stage might be followed by a longer period of adjustment that might include many different emotions, for example, shock, anger, devastation, worry, confusion, helplessness, disbelief, shame, guilt. You might feel guilty even if you did nothing to contribute to the epilepsy, self-consciousness, or just simply feeling overwhelmed. These feelings are often brought on by a lack of or limited information about epilepsy. You might know some of the basic medical information about what a seizure is, but not about the personal experience of what it's like to have epilepsy. And actually, you yourself might have never known someone with epilepsy. You might also feel self-conscious. This might be in response to expecting to be treated differently, or maybe the experience of actually having been treated differently, for example, at work or school or social situations. And unfortunately, there really is still a lot of stigma and lack of understanding about epilepsy. And sometimes these psychological and social impacts are even more challenging than the seizures themselves. There's also some practical and physical ways that epilepsy is probably impacting your life at the same time that you're dealing with these overwhelming emotions. At the same time as you're feeling all these different things, you might also be dealing with some physical symptoms, both from the seizures themselves and sometimes the after effect of the seizures, and possibly the side effects of the medications that you're taking as you and your doctor work over time to adjust your medications to meet your needs. Also, at the same time, you might be experiencing and adjusting to some lifestyle changes that are challenging. For example, not being able to drive is a big one for everybody. You might have some possible job restrictions. For example, your former job may have included climbing ladders and you're not allowed to do that anymore. And now you have to take medications on a regular basis. You might also experience a roller coaster of other emotions that are not unlike the stages of grief that someone experiences when they lose a loved one. And these stages, in no particular, are usually denial, bargaining. Bargaining is where you kind of say, I'll be, say, for example, a good person for the rest of my life if only this thing goes away. You might also experience anger, depression, and then finally there's acceptance. And acceptance is not necessarily liking or being okay with the epilepsy, but accepting that it is the new reality and learning how to live with it. And there's no particular time frame for how long you might spend in a particular stage, and you might cycle in and out of these feelings. And actually, what you may experience may be something similar to a grieving process, a process of letting go of your former sense of who you are and the way your life was, and some things that you took for granted. So how can you handle some of these initial unsettling emotions after the diagnosis? So there's some more strategies below, but some of the things that you can do, first, just allow yourself to sit with these emotions. You don't need to push them aside or push them down. Some people in your family or friends may tell you to snap out of it, but these feelings are natural and you have a right to them. And acknowledging your feelings can be an important first step in being able to deal with some of the challenges that you'll face ahead. And like I said before, it is okay to grieve a little bit. It's okay to experience and just be with those emotions, any sadness, any anger. Just make sure that you don't let yourself get so stuck in them that you can't move forward. And take the time that you need for yourself and for any personal reflection that you need. Second, try to find an outlet for your emotions, for example, writing or journaling, doing some artwork, listening to music, some safe physical activity, talking with a friend, etc. There might be different things that are helpful for you. Third are some basic stress management techniques. These might include setting small, realistic goals for yourself, such as doing something you enjoy every day, even if it's something small, or letting go of unnecessary responsibilities and try to find other people to take over them if possible. And very important to me, I think, are especially effective, are some mindfulness techniques, which have been shown to improve mood among people with epilepsy, but also, people without epilepsy. They're just very effective. And mindfulness is kind of like a centering technique, almost like meditation. It helps you to just really focus on the here and now and be present in the here and now. And there is a link that I have at the end of the webinar if you're interested in trying out some mindfulness techniques or learning some more about them. And then finally, you can talk to someone, such as the Epilepsy Foundation or a social worker, a nurse, etc., about whether there are some concrete resources that can help you with the practical challenges of epilepsy. A big one being the transportation, or maybe the cost of medication or something else that's proving hard for you. So why would you want to become comfortable with your epilepsy or adjust to your diagnosis? Becoming comfortable with your epilepsy and your diagnosis is a frame of mind and a way of interpreting your diagnosis. And you might say, why would I want to accept this? Nobody wants this. And the reasons are that a better adjustment can help you to become more resilient. And resilience is the ability to bounce back from difficulties, or you could just call it toughness. Although it's difficult, facing your diagnosis head-on can lead to better health, better mood, self-esteem, and more satisfaction with life. Whereas refusal to accept the diagnosis, which is kind of like staying in that denial stage that we talked about earlier, can lead to confusion and fear. Coming to view your epilepsy as ordinary and commonplace is an important way of improving quality of life for people with epilepsy. And it really is actually a lot more common than most people recognize. It's the third most common neurological disorder in the U.S. And this one always blows my mind a little bit. There's more than twice as many people with epilepsy in the U.S. as the number of people with multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, and cystic fibrosis combined, which is really amazing. And finally, a better adjustment leads to a better management of your epilepsy, which leads to fewer seizures, which leads to a better quality of life, which everybody wants. So how can you adjust to and become comfortable with your epilepsy? So you may not need to use all these strategies, and not necessarily in this order. You can make a personal decision about which strategies are useful for you based on personal preference and your situation. Although I do think that the exception to this is getting information. I think that everybody should do that, and it should be probably the first thing that you do. So first strategy, get information. And it's a corny old saying, but knowledge really is power. And why would you want to get information about your epilepsy? And the reasons for that are that lack of information can really prolong the negative feelings and stereotypes and worries about epilepsy that you have. You might also not fully understand how to manage it, or you might have some misunderstandings about epilepsy. And this could lead to shame. You may have a strong desire to remain quote-unquote ordinary and preserve your image of who you were before you were diagnosed with epilepsy. And understanding your epilepsy can lead to, again, better management of your seizures, which is important for everyone. Second, how and where can you get some good information? You want good, reliable information. Probably wouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that the internet is chock full of wrong information. And even actually sometimes people that you know, your friends and family, may have a lot of misinformation as well. So places to get good information would be, first, your medical professionals, your doctor or your nurse, especially if you have one specializing in neurology or epilepsy. You can write down your questions for the doctor, and also if you want to, write down their answers or bring someone with you to act as a second set of ears, especially if you have some memory challenges, which a lot of our patients with epilepsy do. Especially get some good information about your type of epilepsy and seizures, because there are different types of seizures, different causes of seizures, different epilepsy syndromes, and they all may look different and might even receive different treatment. Another really good source of information is the Epilepsy Foundation. Their websites are fantastic. There's websites both for the Epilepsy Foundation of Connecticut and also the National Epilepsy Foundation has just loads of good information. Or if you're not an internet person, you could call them for information. They have a lot of great brochures and pamphlets that they can send you. And your doctor's office might actually have some brochures and pamphlets and printed information as well. There's other websites. I think I've listed a couple of those in the resource section to learn more about epilepsy, and also some books, which are in the end of the presentation as well. Also, support groups or online forums can be helpful to learn more about the personal experience of having epilepsy and how to manage it. Maybe not so much the medical information, but the personal experience. Because other people with epilepsy are really the experts on how to live with epilepsy. A second strategy to adjust to and become comfortable with your epilepsy is to get support. And you can do that in a couple of ways. The first one, which I think is great, is to join a support group. You can do that in person. There's several throughout Connecticut, and the Connecticut Epilepsy Foundation's website has a listing of those. They also have a telephone support group, and there's some online, I think it's through the National Epilepsy Foundation, some online support groups and chat rooms, especially those last two if you're experiencing some transportation issues. A second way to get support is to talk to someone about your epilepsy, for example, a close friend, a relative, maybe a clergy member, and also support groups, like we talked about above, can help you in figuring out how to explain your diagnosis to other people. And why would you want to talk to someone about your epilepsy? Some of the reasons are it can help you to become more comfortable and relaxed about your epilepsy and comfortable with talking to other people about it. And if you're comfortable talking about it, that's going to help them feel more relaxed and comfortable about it too. Talking to other people about it can also help you to begin forming a support network. It's important to communicate with your family and friends about how they can help support you and help you manage your epilepsy. And also, really important, so they know how to help you if there's a medical emergency. And just the simple act of talking to people about it can help reduce the stigma of epilepsy a little bit. You might want to practice talking to others, especially if it's going to be for a more formal setting like school school or work. But do keep in mind that not everybody necessarily needs to know about it. Epilepsy does not define who you are. And at the end of the presentation in the resource list, there's a couple of articles about when and how to disclose your epilepsy to other people, especially at work or school. Third strategy is what I call striving for balance and a positive outlook. So you should learn to manage your epilepsy, but don't let it take over your life. There are going to be some adjustments that will need to be made, but don't let it change your view of yourself or get in the way of leading a fulfilling life. Over time, you'll begin to see epilepsy as part of your life, but not as changing your self-image. There's a quote in one of the articles that I read for this presentation. Someone with epilepsy said, "It's a part of who I am, but it's not who I am," which I really liked that quote. Try to not use it as an excuse to not participate in a social or recreational, professional activities that you want to do. And try to think about all the things that you can still do despite the epilepsy. Try to feel no shame in relation to your epilepsy. This may take some time and work. And ways you could do that are to put less stock in other people's reactions or opinions and work on being more open and honest with the people that you feel comfortable sharing with. And also, humor can play an important role in adjustment and help others to feel more comfortable with your epilepsy too. So try to avoid focusing only on the negative ways that epilepsy has impacted your life, and instead try to take charge and become effective at self-management, which leads us to our next point. Take charge, important strategy for adjustment. Over the years, there really have been a lot of important advances made in the diagnosis and treatment of epilepsy, which allows for much better seizure control than in the past. So first, learn how best to manage your epilepsy. And what is self-management of epilepsy? So what it is working together with your loved ones and your medical team to take control of your health and cope with day-to-day challenges. And how can you become effective at self-management? So keep the lines of communication open with your doctor and doctor's office. Let your medical team know about any side effects, symptoms, problems, changes in the frequency of seizures that you have. Nice, convenient way to do this can sometimes be electronic communication if you're either allowed to email your doctor's office or using some kind of electronic charting system like MyChart. Also, being open with your healthcare provider can lead to better management of your epilepsy and your seizures. Third, keep a seizure diary, both to track your seizures but also identify possible triggers, and bring the seizure diary to your doctor's appointment. They like to see those. Make sure that you're taking your medications faithfully, and if you're having trouble with this, or maybe even if you're not, consider maybe using a pill organizer or cell phone reminders. There's also a couple of texting apps that you can find that are useful for this as well. Next, learn, manage, and also minimize common triggers of seizures, such as alcohol and drugs, lack of sleep, and stress. And if you're having trouble managing these or minimizing them, talk with your doctor. They might have some things that can help you with that. And then also, again, at the end of the presentation, there's some more information and resources to help you become effective at self-management. Another way to take charge is to take some positive action. Consider participating in maybe a public awareness event or a fundraiser, something that allows you to get involved, help others, and turn your experience into something positive. These kind of events also help to spread awareness and reduce the stigma and myths around epilepsy, which is going to be helpful to everybody. Some examples of some of these kind of events, and again, a lot of them can be found on the Epilepsy Foundation website, both in Connecticut and nationally. There's the Sharon's Walk, Run, Ride for Epilepsy, which is usually held in May. There's Purple Day, which is held in March, and there's a website there for that. Coming up soon is the Purple Pumpkin Project, which is a fun one. Basically, all you need to do for that, and there's more information about this on the Epilepsy Foundation site as well, but you paint your pumpkin purple, and it's a way of kind of spreading awareness and information about epilepsy when people ask you, why is your pumpkin purple? And again, a lot of other events, both through the Epilepsy Foundation and other organizations as well, if you look online. So fifth, be patient, give yourself some time. Although it can be hard to wait, the passing of time itself can help you to feel more comfortable with your epilepsy diagnosis. And like anything, there's going to be good days and bad. And becoming comfortable with your epilepsy really does take time, but using one of the strategies that we just talked about can help this process along and also help lead to a better adjustment. And also through this process, you might discover some new strengths in yourself, make some new connections, and possibly even find some new meaning and goals in your life. So we do need to talk a little bit about if you find that you're needing more help. First off, very important, if you do have any suicidal feelings, feelings that you want to hurt yourself, or even feelings like you want to hurt somebody else, any kind of mental health crisis, you need to talk to your doctor right away, or if the doctor's not available right away or you don't feel comfortable talking to them, you can also call InfoLine, which is a great resource. To get in touch with them, you just dial 211, and they have a 24-hour crisis hotline staffed by trained counselors. And you can also go to the nearest emergency room. But aside from that, how would you know if you needed professional help, like a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist? So if you're experiencing depression, which some people refer to as feeling down or blue, if you're feeling anxiety, also known as excessive stress, worry, or fear, when these negative feelings really start to last for a long time, period of weeks or more, or if they start to interfere with your relationships, your personal life, your school, or your work, that's when it's really time to think about getting some extra help. And how can you find this kind of help? You can start by talking to either your neurologist or your primary care doctor, and they might have some suggestions. And if you do need some counseling from a therapist or possibly some medications from a psychiatrist, you can find a list of covered providers, either through calling your insurance company or visiting their website. You can also, again, call InfoLine. They have a lot of different resources. Or you can visit their website, which is 211ct.org. And at the end of this presentation, once again, I've listed a few helpful websites that are therapist finder websites. And you can search by different specialties. You can search by insurance, location, and that sort of thing. So those might be useful. So here I've listed some of the resources that I mentioned, and I know there's a lot of them. I'm a person who likes a lot of resources, but hopefully you'll find some of them useful. They kind of go along with the different topics that I mentioned today. And also I did list some of the sources that I used for this presentation, just because you might find them interesting as well to read on your own. And that's it. Thank you all for listening. And now I think we're going to open it up to some questions.
And while we're waiting, we'll give you a minute or so just to type your questions if you have any. This webinar has been recorded and will be available on our website probably by the end of the day. So if you wanted to, get a better shot of those resource screens that she provided there, you'll have a chance to go back and take a look at those because it looked like there was some helpful information there. I hope people found this helpful. And, please utilize us here at the Epilepsy Foundation of Connecticut if you have any further questions or need any further guidance or you have questions. So we are available for you. And I guess if there's no questions at this time, we'll go ahead and close and give a big thank you to Carrie, Erwin, and we really do appreciate you putting this together for us. And we look forward to future webinars in the fall, this fall as well.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.